The story begins with a man walking through a hallway in a hospital. He soon sits down near a girl. Attempting to talk to her, he gets told not to. But the man converses with her anyway, telling her he came because he heard she was sick. The girl is Emily. She says he heard wrong before telling him to go home. He doesn't understand her and never will. We learn Emily is this man's daughter. They engage in a lengthy conversation, during which the man claims he wants to help her. Unfortunately for him, his daughter keeps rudely pushing him away. She has cancer. The man says she was too young to understand a certain truth. According to him, the concept of good and evil is subjective. The ideology behind a bad person is someone who has been misunderstood. He says his being an alcoholic is a form of escapism under pressure. However, he worked long hours to support his family. Emily keeps giving him an attitude, due to which he implores that he needs her to believe him. Shortly after, a man comes by, holding flowers. He calls the man Harrison. He claims to have voted for him after Harrison started a campaign against cancer. His son was sick for a long time and Harrison was a big help to them. Despite the praise her father receives from this stranger, Emily gives him nothing except negativity. She hadn't seen him in 6 years. Once the stranger leaves, she keeps verbally Dad. The sick girl yells that he should tell everyone in that hallway why he's there. A nurse approaches them to quell the situation and get Emily to walk away. With her gone, Harrison leaves too. After that uneasy interaction, we watch Emily get an injection. A tear runs down her cheek. Her anger is visible on her face. It eventually gets unbearable, and she slams her head on a wall presumably. 3 years later, Emily has a full head of hair. The light flickers in the washroom she occupies. A monster slowly rises behind her. Thankfully, it vanishes when she turns around. The next scene shows Emily at a house party. She walks with her friend, who tells Emily she deserves a good holiday. Soon this friend makes her bump into a boy. He is Kyle, thanking her for inviting him. Following this, we switch to seeing 3 guys. The one with the long hair shows the other 2 some pills, which are called Joy Boys. He tells the one named Dave not to spike people's drinks with them. Switching back to Emily, a guy named Chad comes to her. She introduces him to Kyle. People have fun as the music plays. Amidst the chaos, Dave spikes a drink with perhaps more pills than necessary. While he's away from it, the long-haired guy moves the contaminated drink so that once Dave returns, he drinks from the one he spiked, whereas the girl he intended to give it to drinks a regular beverage. That's karma coming back around quickly. Another day, the group of friends sit in a diner. They all get to hear the philosophical mind of Chad as he states that the problem with society is that it makes a joke out of anything that has some significance. Brad calls him a preacher. He gets called Hitler in return. Brad wonders how he reached that conclusion. By impeding his freedom of speech, claims Chad. Eventually, they start talking about an Axeman. The name Jimmy Maxwell gets mentioned, someone whom Brad says they shouldn't worry about. At that moment, we see the long-haired guy being held down elsewhere by a few gangsters in suits. Supposedly, he is Jimmy, getting struck by one of those gangsters. While the friends talk, they all turn to look in the direction where they hear the loud sound of motorcycle. At that moment, a hefty lady approaches Brad, asking him if he wants coffee. He says he doesn't, but she pours the caffeinated drink in his cup anyway. This prompts him to give her an attitude. Coming closer to him, she says it's dangerous for him to talk the way he does in this town. The lady intimidates him with her presence, prior to throwing profanity his way. Brad tries to stand up, only to have her sit him back down. She follows this action by calling in one of the motorcyclists who are outside. He enters the diner and puts a mug on the table with his name on it. He wants the group to know that he fixes problems. Elsewhere, we observe a lady coming to a man who watches his daughter slam Lego pieces with a hammer. She says her parents are coming. They always complain about not seeing him. The man is Victor, speaking Russian to her. He always makes the right decisions, he claims. Once there's a knock on the door, the young girl opens it. 2 men in suits enter. Upon seeing them, Victor tells his wife he's going to go somewhere for a short time. The place he goes to is the one containing a restrained Jimmy. Victor starts telling him that some people make bad judgments. They make the same mistakes repeatedly. Scared, Jimmy tells him that someone stole a suitcase containing illegal substances. Victor has to emphasize that those are his substances. He accuses Jimmy of having bad judgment, but Jimmy does give him some useful information by saying the people who have the suitcase went to a place called Orange Lodge. He thinks he left the suitcase in their car. To be more specific, he claims it's at Charlie's house. As Jimmy keeps talking, Victor slams him with a hammer, giving him a mortal wound. The next scene shows a car driving into Orange Lodge. A car behind it pulls it over to the side. A man exits it to approach the car that contains Kyle and Emily. He tells them he got a report back at the diner. However, Kyle mentions that he doesn't look like a policeman. Plus, he's not driving a police car. He wants to see his badge. All the man tells him is that this is a good town with good people. He advises the boy to behave before leaving. When the duo is at a gas station, Emily experiences a problem in the washroom. She pulls something out of her mouth. Suddenly, she vomits a black substance into the sink. The same monster from earlier is there, holding its sharp fingers to her face. Either she's full of fear or too dazed to understand what's going on. Fortunately, the situation does not escalate into anything past this short-lived moment. Afterward, the duo arrives at a house where they join the rest of their friends. It doesn't take long for another man to enter. He says he received a complaint from a neighbor. The girl named Nina says this is Charlie's house and asks the man who he is. He responds that Charlie is gone and he is Edward. He is also known as Silverbeard. Once the introductions are out of the way, Edward asks them an indecent question. He quickly says he's joking. Showing them to another room in the house, he tells the same joke. This time, Emily says it's not funny. After Edward repeats the joke for the third time, Chad informs the indecent man that his humor is making them uncomfortable. Soon Emily thanks him for the tour he gave, wanting him to leave. He tells them that whatever they do, they shouldn't go into the workshop. Additionally, Edward says if they have a problem, they should call his friend Barry. That causes Brad and Kyle to repeat the man's name in unison. Of course, they remember him from the diner. Edward leaves while laughing. If he sees him a second time, Brad decides that he will bash him. Later, we see Dave spiking more drinks. Emily opens a suitcase that she ends up hiding in the oven. It is most likely the suitcase Victor seeks. We see locked closet doors moving as if someone pushes them from the inside. This gets Emily's attention, those sharp fingers near her face again amid the flickering light. When this happens, it seems like Emily is forced to vomit the black substance. She looks at the mirror in front of her to see a message written in blood. It states that the hour draws near that will bring about the release of certain beings, but Emily seems to have hallucinated this message. Subsequently, Nina argues with Brad about the whereabouts of the suitcase Emily hid. He wants her to keep it quiet. It will show up eventually. Nina breaks a chair in anger. Dave tries to calm her by giving her a contaminated drink. He gives similar drinks to the others too. Drinking it, Emily says it tastes weird. That's because it contains Joy Boys, Dave tells her. After that, Emily goes downstairs to find Nina. Nina wants to play a game. Soon the girls walk around in masks, and a mind-altered Kyle witnesses them. It is a dreamy sequence. As the girls move around oddly in front of him, he is out of his mind. However, all of them are. They lay him down on the bed to make the experience more pleasurable. Yet somehow the girls get replaced by the monster that we solely observed be with Emily so far. Once Kyle sees it, he screams in fear. At that moment, Emily sees the monster looking at her from a room. She slowly starts walking toward it. As she does, a person wearing a smiley mask appears behind her. He or she follows Emily until she gets to the room where she sees costumed individual. At that moment, the one behind her grabs her arm. She escapes the grasp to ascend to the second floor and resorts to hiding in a room from the two masks. Later, someone enters a store and is greeted by a stuttering man. The person who entered is Victor, followed by his subordinates. He says they are looking for a group of young people. The stuttering man replies that they don't get many people like that around. When Victor drops the name Charlie Lamont, the man informs him Charlie is long gone. Therefore, he directs Victor to a certain bar where he may get the information he's looking for. Alas, the stuttering man steps into a mistake by telling Victor he needs to pay him $95 for the premium. The problem is that Victor didn't buy anything of that sort. Victor needs to pay the amount, or the stuttering man will have to call Barry. It's no surprise that Victor does not comply with him. While he leaves, he prompts the man to say he's calling Barry. For that threat, Victor's associates deal with the poor man. Back at the house, Emily tells her friends there were masked people in the house. Shortly after, she introduces Dave to the references that Nina was using. He seems to be an expert in discerning the material because he quickly says it's not what Nina or Emily thought it was. According to him, it could be bath salt. If Nina ingested a lot of it, she will not sleep for 2 more days. Brad gets asked about Chad's whereabouts, but he doesn't know. The last time he spoke with him, Chad was going to the workshop. Soon Emily finds a note that states one person should be assassinated. This causes her to ask the group who wrote it. Afterward, Barry arrives at the house by motorcycle. He says he came there to help, a phrase that Brad repeats sarcastically. His remark makes the big man rush to Brad and grab him by his neck. Barry threatens to do bad things to the boy, and Dave talks him into letting go of his friend. In a short time, Barry wants $95 for his services, along with gratitude. We learn this is some standard price for service used by certain people in this town. Emily gives him the amount before Brad starts a scene again. The last thing Barry tells them is that if he finds out they brought to this town, it won't be good for them. In the next scene, Emily is alone in a room. She notices something or someone lying covered on the floor. Uncovering it reveals none other than a deceased Chad. The monster rises behind her. With the monster's presence comes a hallucination of Chad standing beside her. All he does is repeat the word, "Why?" louder with every succession. When she returns to reality, her friends arrive to witness the horror of their lifeless friend. Kyle wants to know who did it. At that moment, Emily reminds them that she said there were other people in the house. She also asks Dave what was in the tea they drank. Nothing that would do that to Chad, he claims. After the incident, we see how troubled Dave is. He walks to a mirror where he sees the monster. Then Victor arrives at that bar. He simply says the name, Charlie Lamont, without saying anything else. A man there tells him to wait. Victor cannot handle being talked to, like he's not important. Therefore, he yells Charlie's name profanely. The man informs Victor that Charlie doesn't live there anymore. He follows this by insulting the newcomer, and all the people there laugh. How does our head-headed antagonist respond? By shooting a random customer to his possible demise, of course. This instantly ignites a brawl. Victor shoots more people while his subordinates beat them. After the brawl ends, with the gangster emerging victorious, the man who gave him a hard time now complies. He says Edward owns the house that belonged to Charlie. Charlie went mad in there, due to the place being cursed. He gives Victor the address. Having acquired what he came for, the gangster leaves. The man whose life he spared calls someone on the phone. Back at the house, a masked person swings an axe at the group. Thankfully, he misses. The girls go separate ways from Kyle. The masked maniac chooses to chase him upstairs, but a surprise waits for him there. The two Smileys catch him before removing his mask. The perpetrator is none other than Brad. In the meantime, the girls hide in a room, where Nina equips herself with an axe. In her moment of severe confusion, she accidentally swings it to cut Emily. The damage she inflicted looks fatal. This causes Emily to suffer from agonizing pain. Later, we see Kyle and Brad sitting restrained in chairs. The two Smileys are there too, and finally reveal who they are, Barry and Edward. The latter calls Brad the Axeman. He was the one who was talked about back at the diner. Barry says Brad needs to be taught a lesson, so he takes him to another room. Left alone with Kyle, Edward wants the boy to know they are not bad people. The reason they do what they do is to purge this town. Edward also says they brought substances to this place. He likens such substances to a disease. Since someone took Chad's life, he has to play God. The man must help them like he helped Charlie. While he talks, we hear Brad suffering in the other room, tortured by Barry. Soon he returns with a very injured Brad. Following this, he uncovers another restrained person, who wears a straitjacket and a mask. Edward gets angry, yelling that this is what happens when illegals get brought into his house. He goes to the washroom shortly after. Alone with the captives, Barry tells them he lost his family because of. The two of them are now in Barry's world. He is an interesting man in that he turns on some music to start putting together a sandwich. In the process of making it, he punches Kyle a few times. The man unwinds as he dances to the music. Once he finishes his sandwich, he goes to work on Brad with a knife. Kyle is forced to witness the brutality. It's Brad's hand that Barry severed. He places it near his completed sandwich. Then a determined Brad stands up to try to take revenge on Barry. But that opportunity gets demolished by Victor's associates, who shoot him down. The music stops and Barry approaches one of them to attack him with the knife. After quickly dealing with him, he throws the knife in the other one's face. However, he too gets dealt with by a blast from behind. The person who condemned him his final day is Victor. Barry made that sandwich for nothing unless someone else will eat it. Edward returns from his break to see the mess that unfolded in his absence. Seeing Victor, he wonders who he is. Victor is the man who shoots him, though not fatally. He comes to Edward, saying his associates were good people, yet now they are deceased. Edward tells him he's not going to leave this town alive. Collecting a chainsaw, Victor uses it to cut Edward. While he does, the person in the straitjacket manages to run away. Later, Emily comes to a suffering Nina to help her. Didn't Nina take her life with the axe? It seems like that was a hallucination. Emily places the girl in bed, where she loses consciousness. Soon the monster comes at Emily, almost stabbing her in the eye with its sharp finger, but she pushes it off. the monster appears again to stand near her, prompting the girl to scream in fear. For a brief moment, the monster turns into her father. Emily collects a knife from a box. As the monster keeps trying to attack from different angles, she keeps swinging at it fearfully with the knife. Eventually, she brings it down and stabs it several times. The problem is that who she truly stabbed was the person in the straitjacket, not the monster. Emily removes the mask, discovering that the one she stabbed is Dave. She cannot believe that she took his life. It causes her to vomit before she cries in the corner. After that, Kyle gets brought into another room by Victor. The gangster wants to know where his suitcase is, which is something Kyle cannot tell him. Emily enters to see what's going on. Victor comes to her, holding her by her head. He tells the girl it's hard to face who one is, prior to pushing her down near Kyle. Fortunately, Nina strikes him with a baseball bat on his head from behind. Victor falls, losing his consciousness. This allows the 3 survivors to exit the room. Kyle tries to get Emily's attention, but she looks very troubled. She yells for something to get out of her head. When Kyle says he wants to help her, she tells him to understand she will never care for him the way he wants her to. She follows those words by insulting him. This pushes him to the point of giving anesthesia. In an unknown amount of time, Emily wakes up restrained in bed. Even worse than her being in such a mess is that Kyle is. Once he finishes, he undoes her restraints. The boy who got what he wanted sits on the bed with his back toward her. He should have been on his guard, for she fatally injures him with a knife. This ordeal makes her vomit that black substance on him. Then the monster appears to hug her. Soon we see it's not the monster who is hugging her. It is her father. They sit near each other without saying a word. Moving along, Emily comes to sit near Nina. They hear a man from outside yell that he will count to 10. By the time he reaches that number, everyone inside the house has to be out. He does count to 10. However, the deceitful man skips the 7 numbers that exist between it and the number 2. With the magic number's arrival, guns start ruthlessly shooting the house. We see 2 people outside firing automatic rifle. In several seconds, a gang of motorcyclists arrive to join the duo. The girls exit the house with their hands in the air to signal their surrender. Victor exits too, prompting one of the bikers to yell out that he is the one. He is the man from the bar that Victor trashed. He enters the house to investigate it. The man who looks like the leader asks Emily why she looks familiar. His thinking gets interrupted by the man exiting the house to inform his friends that Barry is deceased along with Edward. Emily attempts to make a deal with the bike gang. She offers the suitcase she hid, saying it's worth a lot of money. But the leader says this isn't how they do things around there. At that moment, Victor's phone rings. Instead of that gangster answering it, the motorcyclist does. It is Victor's wife, asking who she's talking to. We learn his name is King, yet she doesn't care who he is. This is an expressive lady who demands to talk to Victor. She threatens King of doing horrible things to him if he doesn't do what she demands of him. So the man ends the phone call. Victor struggles to get his words out, asking King if he knows who Victor is. Needless to say, King doesn't care who he is, just like Victor's wife does not care who King is. No one here cares about another person's status. He takes out a machete to hack away at Victor with it. The man's wife and daughter have lost him. Several of the bikers take him away to bury him. Returning to where they were previously, King informs Emily that he doesn't care about money. All he cares about is his town. Then he remembers where he saw the girl. She was the one arguing with her dad in the hospital. King was there with his wife, who passed away in a few months. Because of Emily's speech, he decided to become the boss of his town. Since that time, they managed to filter out all the bad people. King thanks Emily for that. Her speech made him the man he is. Therefore, the leader allows her to leave, but Nina must stay. Emily firmly tells him she isn't leaving without her friend. The man from the bar takes Nina regardless of what Emily said. Hitting her makes Emily angry at King. He takes out his machete, advising the girl not to speak to him like that. Later, Emily walks on a beach. She struggles there, punching the sand out of anger. Once she stands, we observe blood on the side of her face. She walks into the ocean to maybe cleanse herself externally and internally. Back to the motorcycle gang, King enters the house to find the monster. He comes out to say he's disappointed upon not encountering. In a short time, the monster comes out to take King. His gang hears his screams, along with gunshots. Afterward, from our point of view, the monster exits the house to come for Nina.